The first harvest truck rolled onto the county scale just after sunrise, and the old digital numbers flashed once, twice, then froze as if the machine itself refused to believe what it was measuring. Workers gathered in stunned silence. A field everyone had mocked for months had just produced the highest sunflower harvest anyone in the region had ever recorded. The same neighbors who had laughed at the endless sea of bright yellow blooms stood speechless, realizing that what they had dismissed as decoration was about to rewrite the future of an entire farming community. No one could understand how the poorest boy in the valley had accomplished what generations of experienced farmers never could, and the truth behind those flowers would leave far more than the harvest records changed forever. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, if you believe kindness can overcome cruelty, if you believe forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and if you believe hope deserves another chance, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you can continue growing with our family and our community. Every morning began under warm sunlight for 18-year-old Preston Hale, whose worn work boots carried him across 80 neglected acres inherited after the passing of his grandmother, Eleanor Hale. The land had once been respected, but years of poor seasons, debt, and neglect had turned it into dry, exhausted soil that barely supported weeds. Preston had no expensive machinery, no wealthy relatives, and no investors waiting to rescue him. He owned an aging tractor that coughed more than it ran, a weathered barn leaning slightly to one side, and memories of his grandmother gently reminding him that healthy soil always rewarded those patient enough to understand it. While others rushed to chase profits every season, Eleanor had spent years teaching him that the ground beneath his feet was alive and deserved to be cared for before it could provide abundance. Those lessons became the only inheritance that truly mattered. The neighboring farms belonged mostly to families who had accumulated modern equipment, irrigation systems, and government support over generations. They looked at Preston with sympathy at first, then amusement when spring arrived and he planted nothing but sunflower seeds across nearly every acre. They expected corn, soybeans, wheat, or something practical. Instead, week after week, golden stalks climbed toward the bright blue sky until the hills looked like they had been painted with sunlight itself. Drivers slowed only to laugh. Tourists occasionally stopped to take photographs, believing the colorful fields were meant only for beauty. Local newspapers even printed a cheerful article calling Preston's farm the valley's prettiest mistake. The article hurt far more than he admitted. Every smile from strangers reminded him how little faith people had in his dreams. Bills continued arriving. Equipment needed repairs he could barely afford. The bank sent polite but increasingly serious notices about overdue payments. Every afternoon he sat beneath the shade of an old oak tree, studying notebooks filled with observations his grandmother had written decades earlier. She had documented rainfall, insects, root growth, bird migrations, soil texture, and crop rotations with astonishing detail. Hidden among those pages was a pattern almost nobody else had noticed. Sunflowers restored exhausted soil, attracted essential pollinators, loosened compacted earth with their deep roots, and created healthier conditions for future harvests. Even more importantly, Eleanor had experimented with high-oil sunflower varieties that few commercial farmers had ever considered because they demanded patience rather than shortcuts. While others measured success by appearance, Preston measured every inch of growth below the surface. His closest friend, Garrett Collins, visited often during sunny afternoons. Garrett repaired machinery for neighboring farms and quietly helped Preston keep the old tractor running despite never charging him full price. Garrett believed in Preston because he remembered Eleanor's wisdom and respected anyone willing to fight for honest work. Although he worried constantly about Preston's finances, he never encouraged him to give up. Instead, he spent long afternoons repairing broken equipment while listening to Preston explain soil biology, pollinators, and sustainable farming. Those conversations slowly transformed Garrett's own understanding of agriculture. He began realizing that Preston wasn't planting flowers. He was rebuilding life beneath the fields. Summer arrived with relentless heat. Nearby cornfields began showing signs of stress. Wheat harvests looked weaker than expected. Farmers complained about insects damaging leaves and roots. Preston's fields, however, stood tall beneath brilliant sunshine. Thousands of bees floated peacefully among enormous blossoms while butterflies covered the landscape with constant motion. Birds nested along the field edges, feeding on harmful insects that devastated neighboring crops. Every visitor admired the beauty without understanding the hidden balance unfolding in plain sight. Then another unexpected challenge arrived. A powerful daytime windstorm swept across the valley. Heavy gusts flattened sections of corn, damaged irrigation systems, and stripped fruit from orchard trees. Everyone assumed Preston's towering flowers would suffer even greater destruction. Instead, the flexible sunflower stalks bent with the wind and gradually straightened once the storm passed. Their deep roots held the soil together while preventing erosion that washed away valuable nutrients from neighboring properties. When the skies cleared, Preston walked through his fields under bright sunshine, discovering surprisingly little damage. For the first time, a few skeptical farmers stopped laughing. Still, nobody imagined what harvest season would reveal. Late one warm morning, representatives from a regional food company unexpectedly arrived after hearing about Preston's unusual crop. They had been searching across several states for growers capable of producing premium sunflower oil naturally rich in flavor and nutrition. Most commercial farms focused on quantity rather than quality, but Preston had unknowingly cultivated exactly what they needed. Soil samples revealed exceptional mineral balance. Seed testing showed oil content exceeding industry expectations. Pollination rates had produced larger seed heads than agricultural experts considered likely under local conditions. The visitors requested permission to inspect the entire farm. They spent hours walking beneath endless rows of towering flowers while Preston carefully explained every practice he had followed. He spoke about compost instead of synthetic shortcuts. He described protecting pollinators rather than eliminating every insect. He explained rotating cover crops, preserving natural grasses around field borders, and trusting long-term soil health over immediate profits. By afternoon, the representatives realized they weren't simply looking at a successful sunflower farm. They were witnessing one of the healthiest agricultural ecosystems they had evaluated in years. Word spread rapidly across the county. The same people who had mocked the flowers began driving past again, this time slowing not to laugh but to count the enormous seed heads stretching toward the horizon. Agricultural specialists visited. University researchers requested permission to study the soil. Local reporters returned, embarrassed by their earlier article. Preston welcomed every visitor with quiet humility. He never reminded anyone how they had ridiculed him. Instead, he simply explained what his grandmother had taught him. Harvest finally began beneath clear blue skies. Combines rolled carefully through golden fields while trucks lined the farm road waiting their turn. Every load exceeded expectations. Every acre broke previous records. Oil production estimates climbed higher with each laboratory report. Buyers competed for contracts. What had seemed like decorative flowers became one of the most profitable harvests the county had ever witnessed. Farmers who once pitied Preston now openly admitted they had underestimated him. Yet the greatest surprise came after the final truck departed. Soil testing revealed that Preston's fields were healthier after harvest than before planting. Organic matter had increased. Beneficial microorganisms flourished. Moisture retention improved dramatically. Scientists explained that future crops planted there would likely outperform regional averages because the sunflowers had restored the land itself. Preston hadn't simply produced a remarkable harvest. He had healed exhausted farmland while earning enough income to eliminate every debt burdening his family. Many expected success to change him. Instead, Preston quietly began helping neighboring farmers improve their own soil. He organized free daytime workshops inside the renovated barn where he shared every notebook Eleanor had left behind. He explained that real prosperity came from working with nature rather than constantly fighting it. Some attendees were the very people who had laughed loudest months earlier. They arrived carrying embarrassment alongside curiosity. Among them was Harold Mercer, the wealthiest farmer nearby and one of Preston's harshest critics. Harold had publicly dismissed the sunflower fields as childish landscaping instead of serious agriculture. Pride had prevented him from listening when Preston first described his ideas. Now Harold faced declining yields, mounting expenses, and soil becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Walking into Preston's barn required swallowing years of arrogance. Preston welcomed him with the same kindness shown to everyone else. That simple act of grace transformed more hearts than any harvest record ever could. As seasons continued, more farms adopted sustainable practices inspired by Preston's example. Bees returned in greater numbers throughout the valley. Native flowers reappeared along field edges. Bird populations increased. Soil erosion declined. Crop diversity expanded. The entire community slowly shifted from competing against one another toward learning together. Prosperity spread not because one farmer became wealthy, but because one young man refused to answer ridicule with bitterness. The old newspaper that once called his farm the valley's prettiest mistake later published a very different headline across its front page: "Sunflower Vision Revives an Entire Farming Community." Preston framed both articles and hung them side by side inside the barn. Visitors often asked why he displayed the first one. He always smiled gently because it reminded him that today's laughter can become tomorrow's applause, and that faith often grows strongest when nobody else can see the harvest waiting beneath the surface. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever kept believing in a dream even when everyone around you laughed or doubted you? Please leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson this story reminded you of, because your words may encourage someone else who feels like giving up today. Years later, every summer afternoon painted the valley with countless fields of bright sunflowers stretching toward the horizon. Travelers admired the beauty, children ran through farm markets smiling beneath the golden blossoms, and older farmers often paused quietly to remember the season that changed everything. Preston never claimed the success belonged only to him. Whenever anyone praised his achievement, he spoke first about Eleanor's wisdom, about caring for the land, about patience, forgiveness, and believing in possibilities hidden where others saw only failure. The greatest harvest had never been measured by truckloads or profits. It had been measured by restored hope, renewed friendships, healed land, and a community that finally learned never to judge another person's dream before its season had arrived. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that the brightest fields often begin as the dreams everyone else laughs at, and sometimes the seeds planted with faith grow into blessings that nourish far more than the one who first believed in them.